Alcoholics Anonymous, How Support Groups Can Help You by Nia Jackson. So to start, in this project I'll be discussing 2 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings I attended as an observer online, the research behind their importance on patients, and how finding a spiritual reason or power to help stay strong on abstinence can be beneficial to the attendees on staying sober. In the first group, the majority of attendees were 55 plus, and there were 41 people in this meeting, and it was held at 1 p.m. In the second group, there were, it was again another online meeting held at 9 p.m. with most people in the group being 35 plus, and there were 28 people in the meeting. The majority attending both meetings were male, but there were females there as well as female hosts and male hosts, which was really nice to see. They were both open meetings, meaning anyone was allowed to attend from any demographic, but they had sign-in sheets if necessary for court-ordered attendance, which we did have a couple of. The meeting was for those who had started sobriety recently, those who had been sober for years or decades, sponsors and their sponsees, meaning alcoholics who are in recovery or have been in recovery for years and have decided to help new people who are new to sobriety start on their journey on staying sober, and those interested in becoming sober who are currently not. And they were also given resources if they were in that last group, and everybody else was as well, but especially for people who are still struggling with substance abuse issues or alcohol use disorder. So then we'll go on to the next slide.
So, the context of Meeting 1, held on March 19, 2026, the main conversation point of this meeting was faith and understanding when they realized they needed help. So, the meeting was originally intended for those in Britain and the UK who were 65 plus, but people of all ages were allowed to attend. They shared personal stories about setbacks, like losing children, jobs, friends, opportunities, and we talked a lot about trauma and finding purpose after it, which is often the reason that alcoholism started for them, as a way to cope with things they had never moved past or as a way to numb themselves. We talked about making changes and leaving friend groups behind that would enable their behavior, and stopping old habits like binge drinking from occurring by avoiding areas that are tempting, like clubs, pubs, liquor stores, and even parts of grocery stores at the beginning of their sobriety. They talked about the importance of apologizing to those that they have hurt in the past, and how showing up for their families, friends, at work, and their community was now very fulfilling instead of drinking, and how even though that you could miss the drinking, that the setbacks that they had to go through remind them of why it's not worth it in their lives. We talked about keeping relationships steady and using tools to cope that involve relaxation, venting with others online, like in the peer support group, and taking time to rest when overwhelmed. We celebrated people's milestones, like 15 years of sobriety, 120 days of sobriety, and how speaking with others online helped them to find a way to connect with those who understand their pain. The second meeting, held on March 22nd, 2026, at about 9 p.m., and the first one was about 1 p.m., was the main conversation point of this meeting was, again, faith, a portion of the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, or the alcoholics literature related to recovery and sobriety. We focused on finding a higher power, which did not have to be religious, but could be an entity, this universe as a whole, a celebrity in some cases, or whatever they used to admire, to help remember to ground themselves in stressful situations. The importance of using small things like prayer every day to remind themselves why alcohol is not the way, and how saying these prayers could be a source of comfort when around temptations, like alcohol in stores they walked into, pubs they passed by, and when life gets complicated, which it always does. And how when you think that something else has a higher power enough to get you through those moments, and that you will get through it if you just keep trying, that's what would make them be able to stay sober each day. And we ended the meeting with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. From alcoholicsanonymous.org.uk. Both of these meetings I attended were online remotely, and they were held either once a week or every day. At the same time, there was also a meeting in the parking lot after where we discussed tips on how to help others in life and silly things about how, for example, everyone in the group has butts in common, which, sorry if that's a bit inappropriate, but this was brought up as a source of commonality in the group, as well as the fact that they were all alcoholics or addicts, that they might not talk or get along well with each other due to politics, religion, culture, values, and just certain things not meeting in life, but they were all here regardless of all of that for the same reason, which is to stay sober and fight for recovery every day together. And that made attending meetings worth it for them and makes life more attainable for them to have people to cope with it. And I thought that was really beautiful. All humans. Excitation versus reality. I guess I assumed that there'd be more prompts relating to the 12 steps in more detail, but we ended up talking more about what sobriety meant to each person as individuals and how taking these steps were so vital to being able to progress in their lives. How most of them didn't think they had that much of a problem compared to what they had seen on TV, online, and other forms of media, or in their own lives, like with people they care about. And realizing that no, it's not just about being better than anybody else, but that you have a disease that's affecting your brain chemistry, and that it's how your decision making is impacted that also can determine what makes you able to drink and put it down and needing it all the time and requiring it to the point of self-sabotage and destruction, which is what made them realize they're alcoholics. It was less organized than I thought it would be, but I kind of like how we got to speak more about current dilemmas in their life and how they would also reflect on how they would have reacted in the past with anger and drinking. For example, maybe when something goes wrong, like one of the people online was talking about their plumbing and how there was mold growing in their house and people messed up the plumbing and then there was a leak, and how she in the past would have drank and angrily cussed them out, but now she's took a second to just breathe and get to work on looking at YouTube videos to fix the problem herself, and how she's just really proud of herself for that. And I liked that about this, that it could be random or it could just be other little things, but they just managed to talk about everything. And it was also just very spiritual in the fact that praying every day, no matter what could help so much, and they would notice a difference when they didn't. And so that's what keeps them going every day also as well, is just saying something to themselves like, I can get through this with this higher power. They face a lot of stigma in the community about being selfish, that they can never get better, like once an addict, always an addict. And as healthcare professionals, friends, and family, it's really good to be non-judgmental around people so that they could continue to ask for help and get help towards the pathway towards recovery, because recovery is possible for them. And it could stop people from succeeding in their lives if we have bias against people who suffer with these addictions, or how we speak about people with these addictions. And hitting low points for them made them reach out even with the stigma because of how much it impacted their lives. So being open to listening to them actively, having empathy and kindness can really help with having people reach out to you for help. And that's basically what I talked about in this slide for therapeutic relationships in nursing, in support groups, and just at the hospital, using that kindness, empathy, respectfulness, honest communication, having boundaries, and making sure to stay on topic so you could all reach the common goal, which is staying sober and working together to collaborate on those goals. In my conclusion, I found that peer support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous have a significant benefit on participants involved with the alcohol use disorder and staying sober, that stigma surrounding groups like AA about alcoholics in general can make patients accepting that they have an addiction difficult, which stops many patients from receiving help. That along with sponsors, support from friends and family, addictions counselors, and meditation prayer, the AA support groups are beneficial in healing for millions of people suffering from addictions. And some of my research showed about 2 million people around the globe use groups, peer support groups like AA, that can be very helpful for them in gaining the pathway towards recovery and staying sober permanently. And even if some people relapse, it's still a better thing to have than to not in most cases of people suffering from alcohol use disorder. That healthcare professionals can encourage patients to receive help by staying considerate and avoiding judgments. And patients believing they are safe to speak with professionals or ask for help starts with how you interact around them. And so we could all do a lot better at helping each other in that way and being open and these are my references. Thank you for listening.